You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy. Today, Roisin, we're delighted to be joined by long-standing councillor for the Tullow electoral area on Carlow County Council, William Patten or Will Patten, whatever way you want to say it. Will has been a member of Carlow County Council since 1999, where he was elected as a member of the Labour Party, and Will has been a two-time chair of Carlow County Council as well in 2010 to 2011 and 2017 to 2018. And within the last couple of months, Will has decided that he will contest the next local elections, which are happening in June, as an independent uh, candidate, who is not aligned to any independent grouping or alliance. So he is a independent. So we're delighted to have you here on the Irish Political Roundup.
Thank you very much, Roisin and Paul, and it's wonderful to be with you this morning. Thank you very much for having me. Can I say a good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the people who are listening to the broadcast?
And I said it to Roisin there. I really like the fish tank there in the background. You know, we've covered fishing a lot, in the last little while, so it kind of ties in nicely with some of the themes we've been covering here on the program. So it's kind of like when the stars align, kind of thing.
Perfect.
Um,
I'm sort of a hobbyist. I have some platies, mollies, and swordtails, and I'm actually surprised that I'm even successfully breeding in the tank as well. So it's a great hobby, and sometimes when you've come in from a long day of canvassing and you just want to download, just to sit in front of the tank with the feet up for a few minutes and
yeah,
watch the fish and check to see is there any new fish in the tank, which happens occasionally. Uh, it's a real nice way of winding down at the end of the day.
and well, if my maths is correct, this is probably your fifth local elections that you've contested. The first as an independent candidate. How would you compare election, this election campaign to your first one back in 1999, which was 25 years ago?
This is actually my sixth campaign, believe it or not. The sixth, yeah. Um, I suppose back then I was very, let me call it raw, doughy-eyed, new to the whole thing, not really understanding what it was necessarily about, but just absolutely delighted to get out to meet people. This time, I was. I think everybody, all the candidates, are a bit anxious to start to hit the doorsteps and talk to people. This time, I'd have to say, I'm enjoying it more than I ever enjoyed it before. Just it's like meeting old friends after an
Yeah,
interval of 5 years, admittedly, but it's meeting old friends, and people recognize you. Now, sometimes they can't put a name to you, but you can see when somebody goes, "Oh, who's your man?" Like, "Oh, yeah, oh, I know
yeah.
him. Yeah, yeah." And then I say, "Good morning, good evening, Will Patten," and yeah, the recognition comes immediately. So the fact that you've been there for nearly 25 years, people do
Mm.
recognize you. They tell me that they read about me in the Carlow Nationalist. They follow me on social media, particularly Facebook, and so longevity in the job does give you high recognition.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. And um, as I said, you were a Labour Party member of Carlow County Council up to early this year, and you've
Mhm.
now subsequently gone as an independent. How have the people of Tullow taken to that change that you made?
I haven't had one person actually wasn't happy with it, but everybody else has actually said, "Congratulations, well done. It's a good move." Uh, I think the Labour Party in the Tullow electoral area just hasn't existed in 10 years or more. Like I suspect I was the only card-carrying member of the Labour Party, uh, and that left people wondering like what's happening. Unfortunately, I think since the 2011 election, which was the best ever in terms of seats for Labour,
Mm,
and the worst ever in terms of effect upon Labour, I think it's been a very difficult period for the Labour Party. Uh, I think many mistakes were made. Unfortunately, those mistakes are wholeheartedly ingrained in the Irish public's psyche, and they're not going to go away. Now, the reason I left was because there is no Labour Party structure in Carlow. There is no Labourship member. There might be a dozen members left, mainly in the south of the county, based around Councillor William Quinn. But apart from that, like, there is no party here. And I had the previous election, I had actually thought about becoming an independent. And midway through this current term, I deeply regretted I didn't run as an independent. And I said, I'm not going to make the same mistake again. So I spoke to Labour head office, tendered my resignation, and made the announcement several months ago at a meeting at Carlow County Council. I felt it was very important for me to stand before the electorate as an independent, not as a Labour, and then resign and become an independent. I felt that they needed to know exactly where I was and what I'm doing. And like you said, some people have said, what sort of independent are you? Is that is that Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour independent, or Sinn Féin independent? I said, no, I'm actually an independent.
Yeah.
And that's refreshing, isn't it? That's really refreshing to know that, especially because everyone now is going independent, going on the bandwagon that everybody is looking to vote for independence. But are the independents really independent is what a lot of people are asking.
Well, I think most people in Tullow would tell you that I'm not afraid to voice my opinion, no matter how controversial that opinion might be. So I think I'm trusted by the public that if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. If I raise an issue, I don't do it with venom, hatred, or anything like that in my heart. I raise it because there's a genuine concern that needs to be addressed. I think you look at the current political discourse, a lot of it happens around immigration, and it's so easy for someone to turn around and say to you, oh, you're a racist. You're one of the far right. And I think that's preventing people from saying what they really want to say in public, and they're nearly afraid to say it amongst a group of friends. But I'm finding more and more people are coming to the doorstep and talking to me about it because they know I'm going to listen and I'm not going to use the label racist or far right. I'm going to listen to their concerns. Only by listening to people's concerns and talking to them about them and trying to understand their concerns can you address their concerns. And if you address concerns, you stand a chance maybe of changing their opinion about a particular topic. I find far too many of the political parties at the moment try to shut down any discussion about immigration. Certainly at the last meeting of Carlow County Council, when I had a notice of motion in to say that basically we did not need yet another international protection accommodation refugee centre in Tullow. Fianna Fáil in particular, led by Fintan Phelan, shut me down. You know, came up with an amendment to my notice of motion that basically just ridiculed the thing. So they're not even prepared to discuss it. And I find that unfortunate. I think if they're listening to the public, which I am, it is one of the major concerns and topics of this election campaign.
Absolutely. And it's actually interesting you mentioned Fianna Fáil, or two councillors in Galway that raised concerns about international protection centres or in their area, and they were subsequently kind of punished, and they've now left the party and joined the Independent Ireland party. So it certainly is a big issue. And we were talking off there when it comes to the whole subject of international migration, and the county council has very little say or role in this, and the amendments to legislation has would you feel kind of made things more difficult, and is kind of maybe feeding some of the tensions that are out there at the moment?
Well, certainly, I think people need to clearly understand the role of Carlow County Council, say in particular, in looking at an application for an international protection centre is very, very, very limited. Right? It's not like somebody sends in a planning application like would happen for, say, a house in the countryside or a social houses whatever.
Mm.
It just doesn't happen like that. Someone acquires a building, decides that they're going to turn it into an international protection refugee centre. They go onto the Department of Integration website, they find a contact name, they look at the contract that's available there, they make contact with the department, they have a discussion privately between the department and the developer. And the next thing that happens is they put in a formal application into the department. Then the department does tell Carlow County Council they have received an application. At that stage, in fairness, the Director of Service for Humanitarian Response in Carlow County Council does tell the councillors that they have received an application for an international protection centre. But that's the end of the council's role until the only other part that council has in it is making sure that the building has a fire certificate and lives up to national fire regulations. Outside of that, it's not like the council or the councillors or the elected members have a yay or nay vote on it. We don't. No, most of the time we get an email from the Department of Integration saying this building is now turning into an international protection accommodation centre. 25 people are coming, and we know nothing about the 25 people are coming. We were told, we were promised in the beginning that we would have consultation, that local councillors would be contacted, that our fears and concerns would be addressed. That's not happening, and it's deluded of anyone to put that out there. It's just not happening. So in many cases, the public know about a building becoming an international protection centre for refugees is when maybe a fleet of taxis turn up and a bundle of lads appear with bags and troop in, and the next day they're out in front of the building with nothing to do and all day to do it. I've taken the attitude and the viewpoint that the public deserve to know what's happening. So when I receive notice of a proposed international protection accommodation centre, I tell the public. It's not a secret. It shouldn't be secretive. People should know, and people should have the opportunity to write to the Department of Integration to let them know whether they're satisfied or dissatisfied about the proposal. I think the political parties that are there at the moment, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, the Greens in particular, they're shutting down that type of debate. They don't want that debate. They don't want people to know. They want, they're trying to toe the line in government policy, which is why when the two lads from Galway raised their objections, you know, literally speaking, Fianna Fáil slapped them down and told them to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, this bucko here, he's not going to sit down and shut up. I will tell the public, I will keep them informed. Yeah. And I think one of the things that people say to me all the time is, we love your social media, your Facebook page, because it's so informative, and you're not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the day, even if I personally get some flack for them.
Yeah, and another thing about your social media, I don't know if you've seen this, Roisin. You would take, say, the jobs page in the Nationalist, you'd photocopy and put it up, and you know, people find that very helpful. I remember somebody, remember you saying to me one time that there's someone, I think they were unemployed for a while, and they saw your ad on their Facebook page, they applied for it and they got the job, and they said, God willing, if I didn't see, I wouldn't have got that job had you not put that up, you know. So little things like that are great.
It takes a bit of effort, and I must admit I haven't put the jobs up for a while because I've been so busy with the election. But you know, I also like to do an events calendar, try to group all the events happening in the Tullow Municipal District together, put them in a sort of a calendar for people so they can have a quick look at it and say, oh, look, that's on tonight. And it always amazes me how many things happen on the same weekend, and the following weekend there's nothing happening. But that's something I can't control. But yeah, I feel Facebook is an important messaging tool. It does have its advantages in that you can get out and talk to people quite quickly, get a message out quickly, especially when I have so-called 5,000 Facebook friends, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So from that point of view, but it has its downsides. I think some people don't seem to realize that it's not a tool to beat somebody up with. I feel some people just need to maybe take a step back and ask themselves, well, if somebody was saying that directly to me, would I be so happy about it. It has its huge advantages, but I feel, unfortunately, some people take it too far. And then you're faced with the decision, do you remove that person from your page, or do you continue to take unfair abuse or abuse of others who are using your page? So I think you have to be a monitor as well as being a contributor.
Absolutely, yeah. And as you said, you're in full swing election mode. What would be some of the big issues that would be kind of coming up on the doors, Willie?
Okay, there's a good number of issues coming up, but the one that really surprised me, now I didn't see it coming. I would have said housing was going to be the number one issue, right? And I think we would have all expected that. But what I've been surprised is both in the towns and the villages and the countryside, the number one event that keeps coming up to me is traffic, road speeds, traffic management. People feel that our roads are very unsafe. They feel that the number of people speeding is increasing all the time, and that reckless driving, either driving with a mobile phone stuck up here, and it doesn't seem to matter whether it's a car or a tractor or a lorry, overtaking on bends, people unwilling to give on narrow roads, unwilling to give way to each other. Like I let the other lad pull it, yeah, grand. And then suddenly wing mirrors get clipped, and then there's a row. Just recreational walkers feel very unsafe using the road. They may have their high-vis jacket on at this moment in time. They're walking against the traffic, and every now and then they feel they literally have to jump into the ditch to get out of the way. People genuinely do feel unsafe using our roads at the moment, whether you're a pedestrian or driver. And I can certainly tell you, when you get out of your, I mean, when I'm canvassing, I always drive into houses on the left-hand side. I never cross the margin at this stage. It's just too dangerous. You pull in, you're coming out, and you have no noise in the car. You're looking right and left and right again, and you have your window down, and you're listening for that sound. You can't see it, but you know there's a car coming. You've got to be so careful today. And when you park your car up, your hazards are on. And the next thing, this car lorry zooms by, and you can feel the car rattle, and you with it. It's just incredible. People genuinely feel angry and unsafe. And one of the things that is coming up shortly is a national road speed limit review. And I gathered that there is a proposal to bring it from 80 km to 70. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's a complete and utter knee-jerk reaction, and it's the wrong reaction. It causes a few things. For instance, because the speed limit has fallen, people feel they're more safe. It creates that image in their mind, and it's not true. The idiots who speed and were speeding at 90 and 95 and 100, to them 70 is no different than 80. They are still going to speed. But I think the single biggest issue here is the problem is enforcement. Like there is absolutely no point in reducing the speed limit if you're not going to enforce it. And as we all know, Garda Síochána numbers are not where they should be. The road traffic corps might have one or two cars in County Carlow. They can't be all the places all the time. And until we get very serious about either fixed speed cameras or a large increase in the traffic corps, it's not going to work. I think it'll create more danger and resolve problems. You'll find an awful lot more careful drivers will be getting tickets and penalty points. And it's the buccos that are out there speeding will probably dodge that in the main.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you, because I'm driving now, God, 40 years. Imagine I'm driving 40 years. 17, I'm 57. I'm driving 40 years. And I'm wondering, why is there such a behaviour now of reckless driving, speeding? There was always speeding and sort of car accidents, 40 years ago, but not to this extent.
I look at this and I sort of wonder, is a lot of this to do with the pandemic? I think we stayed at home. I sort of get the idea that in my head that people are rushing to catch up or some reason, I'm not sure. It's become psychological, almost like that people feel they have to race now. And I'm not blaming just young lads. And I see, you see grown men and women with children in the back of the car with the phone up to the ear going around a roundabout in Carlow Town. You're thinking, what planet are they from? Like, it's just real. I don't know. I think a lot of things changed in Ireland during the pandemic time. We all had to stay at home. Now we have the freedom. Is it that we feel we just have to enjoy that freedom? And does that freedom mean we now have to look at a speed limit and say it's not a limit, it's a target. Let's hit it and try and see if we can break it. Like it's just. I'm not sure, but I can just tell you that everybody complains about everybody else's driving. So the question for me is, how is my driving doing? Am I a good driver? Am I parking stupidly at times? Am I creating an issue when I pull into the side of a road to go canvas? Should I drive into the avenue? And I've taken to do that as distinct to park outside because I'm trying to think about if I can improve my behavior, maybe others will follow example. I do think we have to ask the question, should our own behavior come under examination? Each and every one of us ask that question of ourselves.
Would there be an argument? Sorry for interrupting.
We have to practice what we preach ourselves.
Yes. Would there be an argument for say after a certain period of time that we all have to reset our driving test? Because I know if that was the case for everyone, a large percentage of us wouldn't pass.
Paul, that's a major contention between me and my son. No, I think that's crazy to make people go and do their driving test. When you think, and I'm not disagreeing with, well, I'm disagreeing with you, but for people, look at the waiting list for even people now to get the driving test, and then you got
even if you said not a test as such, but more kind of like a little refresher course or something like that.
Yeah, actually, as you probably know, guys, I'm a community first responder, and one of the things we ask the community first responder volunteers to do is to get a letter from their insurance company to say that that they're aware of the fact they're now a volunteer. Some of the companies aren't too happy about this, and they're looking for increase in fees. But one of the ways of getting around this is actually, I think, is Aviva have an advanced driver's test, and you spend an hour and a half doing a driver's test with them. And if at the end of them they consider you a good quality driver, they'll give you this certificate. But that's also worth a couple of % discount on your policy. So there are rewards out there for good drivers if you're aware of them and go and follow them up. But it's an interesting one. I don't know. I think a lot of the accidents are down to driver inexperience. Speed, obviously, driver inexperience, maybe not taking the conditions in on time. Where does it say in any book that, after an extended period of dry weather and then it starts to get very, very wet, that the roads are now greasier than before? And you are, if you apply the brakes, you could aquaplane much, much easier. That comes with experience. And I think, what's the saying? You can't put an old head in young shoulders. But I'm not having to go at young people. There are plenty of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s with driving habits that will cause you to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah,
I can't park anymore. Since I hit my midlife, I don't know what's happened. I just cannot park anymore. And my son laughs at me. Look at your parking. He brings me out to the front door and goes, look at your parking. I go, I know. So now I'm making a conscious decision to park.
Well, it took me six ago to get my driving test, so I'm in no position to criticize anyone.
Well, I've discovered with parking, actually, what makes most sense now, and I know people find it difficult, but reversing into the car parking space is so much easier because when you're coming back out, at least you have a decent sight line and it's so much easier. But it's definitely, for me, reversing in is the way to go.
Yeah.
And I believe if you're a retained firefighter, you're told to reverse park wherever you go.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Willie, what is your number two? You said you had 6 issues coming up. So, what would be your number 2 issue coming up?
I'd say what comes up quite a lot now is the government parties and the feeling that people are quite annoyed with Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. The Greens come in for special mention every time. And I'd also say Sinn Féin's not escaping criticism either, which actually surprised me. People do feel betrayed by their stance on immigration. They feel that they've been on the wrong side of the last 2 referenda. And I think there's a little bit of an element of, we expect, after getting such a large Sinn Féin quota into the Dáil, we expected something to come from that, and nothing has come from it. But there is a general dissatisfaction with the government parties. I think Fine Gael in particular is getting hammered. They've been in government since 2011. I think people feel it's time they took a bit of a rest and that something different happens. But I think this is all allied to the third point, which is the cost of living. Genuinely, we seem to be earning the same money, but everything seems to be costing a little bit more. And even simple stuff now, like the return deposit scheme on the plastic bottles, like it's putting 15, 25 pence or cent on a bottle of minerals or whatever, or water. And somehow it feels like this is just another charge, another opportunity for the government to take taxes on us. And the one that I'm hearing in the last few days is actually the increase in the carbon tax fuel. People feel like fuel is way too high. Like, 185 a litre, like it's just not uncommon. Although I do advise people to shop around, because there's certainly some good value to be had out there. And the latest increase in taxes going on, that people are saying, like, it's never been higher, and now you're putting more on it. Are you for real? Like, because the cost of fuel impacts transport. It's a small country, and all our goods, our vegetables, our groceries have to be transported. That just pushes up the cost of all those. So therefore the supermarket put up the cost. There's it's almost subtle. Like, you go in today, it's 115, the next day it's 125. Where the heck did that come out of? Like, what's it? And a lot of the cost is transport. So there's general dissatisfaction over the cost of everyday items. And I mean, genuinely, people say to me, like, I was spending 150 on groceries, and now 160, 170, 180. It's going up all the time. And they're asking, I'm not buying anything different. They're not saying, I'm not putting a litre of vodka or 30, 40 cigarettes in the car. I just don't drink, I don't smoke, I can't afford it. They're just asking, but why is all these prices going up? And what's being done to keep them real?
And to that will affect the price of food, the price of fuel will affect small local businesses, affect farmers, and it will affect employment at the end of the day, because the cost is going up. And then so many small local businesses are closing down now because of the cost.
I mean, have you guys noticed the number of coffee shops that open and 18 months later are closing? Or look at the number of restaurants that have closed. Look at the number of pubs that have closed. Like my hometown, Tullow, had 15 pubs. Today I think there's 4 left. And even they're struggling. So you'd have to query, why is this happening? And it is down to costs. The cost base is just incredible for everything. People constantly blame rates, rents. Well, I look at rates in Carlow. They've gone up once in 13, 14 years. But yet other expenses like telephony, electricity are constantly. You can see electricity has gone up phenomenal.
One of the highest electricity costs in Europe.
And you have to ask, why is it that Ireland always has the most expensive cost? Why do we have the most expensive cost? And when you think about that, then you realize Ireland's called by the multinationals Treasure Island. You can understand why that happens, because they're making giant profits here. But we're not seeing the benefits of that.
Yeah, it would be if you stripped out all the multinationals out of Ireland, what would be left? I, re I really wouldn't want to hazard a guess. And I suppose housing, Willie, that has to be, a big
Yes,
issue coming up as
yeah,
well.
yes. In housing is always a big issue. I would have thought it would be much bigger than it actually is, but I think people can see the evidence of good planning and strategy here in Tullow. We have 70 houses, social houses under construction right now. We have 48 out on the Carlow Road and another 21 on the Castledermot Road here in Tullow. So when people talk to me about housing, at least I'm saying I'm not promising that we're going to build houses. We are actually in the middle of constructing houses, some of which might be available at the end of the year, but most likely before quarter one, the end of quarter one, March next year. We've also had a good response to the repair and lease scheme, RLS, it's known as scheme. That's a scheme where a former vacant commercial building can be turned into apartments or accommodation. And you can see, particularly see here in Tullow, a major building on an important junction, what is known locally as the Slaney Hotel or Slaney House in latter years, has been transformed from, say, a 10-bed hotel into, it's going to be a total of 11 apartments. There's actually 3 2-bed townhouses in it, a number of apartments out the back in what was the ballroom, and the front of the building will contain it. So we're now simply waiting on Irish Water to make a connection to the building. So
Right.
the groundworks outside can be complete. And any day, if that happens any day now, then there'll be 9 new happy social tenants getting houses very, very quickly.
Brilliant.
We will deal with our homeless people first. And I think that's actually what people would want us to do. So the homeless are being dealt with. And as I say, we have 70 other houses, but not just in Tullow. We have a program of 15 or 18 houses in Rathvilly. So people can see houses coming through that we're actually doing the job we're supposed to do. There is still out there what I'd call hidden homelessness. There are people who are in inadequate or unsuitable social housing or maybe HAP rentals. Just it doesn't work. But I'm really confident by the March next year that those people should really have somewhere new and what we call a forever home, that they will feel happy. But that leads on to there are many people who do not qualify for social housing who are in desperate need as well. And this to me is a group of people that need special attention now. If you earn more than 35,000 euros in Carlow, you do not qualify for social housing, and there's no exceptions to the rule, which is a problem. Many people, I've come across situations where there are 2 parents working and 2 kids going to school. They're having to rent a house, pay rent, face the increased cost of living, and trying somehow to save some money towards the deposit. And the problem is that you might want 20,000 to save. By the time you get to 20,000, it's gone up to 25,000 because the value of houses are going up. So I think we really do have to look at how do we help the person or the group of people who do not qualify for social housing, but yet aren't earning substantial sums that they can afford a deposit. It's a tricky one, but it needs to be addressed.
And then there's these affordable housing schemes, really, as well. Now, when you look at them, you think they're great in theory, but when you drill into the numbers, they're not as affordable as they claim to be.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, somebody said to me the other day, I'm a single working parent with 2 kids, and this affordable house is affordable at 240,000 euros. Like, come on, that's outside my reach, let alone their reach, if you know what I mean. It's just what do we do to make affordable mean exactly what it sounds like. You know, does the government have to take a half share in the house? You know, and I know schemes like that do exist, but I think people don't know about schemes. There is a very good, if you go into the Carlow County Council, carlow.ie, and look under housing, there's a very good explanation of the various schemes there. But I find sometimes people are afraid of the paperwork. Even social housing is getting tricky. If you're on social welfare, it's very straightforward. But if you're earning some money, the amount of paperwork and repetitive paperwork you're being asked to produce is very off-putting. Well, I encourage people to stick with it, because at the end of the day, you know, getting a social house to me is like winning the jackpot. Like, you're getting an asset worth at least 250,000 euros for life at a differential rent scheme, and that to me is like winning the jackpot.
And Willie, the main thing too now is coming up is the middle income earners are the new homeless. And that is, you know, you think, my son's in the Defence Forces, and he had to give up his apartment 6 weeks before he went to overseas. He's over in Camp Shamrock now in Lebanon as I speak, right? But so he had to give up his apartment. So I said, go in and just go in, so when you come back, you're not homeless. Go in and apply for a county council house. And so, but he was over the threshold, And yet then my daughter's a doctor, she can't get a mortgage, and she's paying high rent. So we're paying high rents, and there's no way single people can actually even afford to save for a mortgage or be in the mortgage bracket to buy their first home, and yet they're middle income earners.
Yes. Well, first thing, can I send Caelan and his comrades my very best wishes and thank them for their service for Ireland, and wish them a peaceful term in Shamrock and come home safe and sound, because family's very concerned.
Yeah, he's home on Thursday, 4 o'clock. He lands.
Oh, I can only imagine
his name, Willie. Thank you.
I assume you'll be in the airport waiting to see him land.
I'll be there.
And well done, you. But we wish them every success and come home in one piece, we say. And it is increasingly difficult for single people to, work, save. It's almost like they have to become monks or whatever to cloister away and put aside a life for 5 years in order to qualify for a mortgage. And then one of the things I find quite difficult, a bank turns around and says, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry, but you can't afford the monthly repayments." And the monthly repayments they're talking about is, say, 1,200 euros. Yet every month I'm paying 1,600 euros rent. Like, how can I not afford it? It doesn't make sense. So I think the banks have got to ask some questions. The real problem here, as I think, is that the central bank, after the collapse of the Celtic Tiger, the central bank imposed huge rules on the banks that really was trying to make sure there wouldn't be another bank collapse. And I can completely understand that, but I think they've gone too far. It's they look at everything with there's a formula there of some kind. They look at everything through the formula. Oh no, you can't afford that. Well, I can't afford to pay 1,200, but I'm actually paying 1,600 rent on the house at the moment. Like, why can't I afford it? Can you explain that to me? So I think the young people are clearly demonstrating they can afford it. But why aren't the banks taking that into being? And I see more and more people, young lads with young ladies as well, with incomes slightly over 35,000 euros, struggling hard. And again, that's something we really, as a political establishment, we need to be tackling and asking ourselves, how can we help someone in that particular income bracket?
Yeah. Exactly, because if you don't, what will they do? They'll leave, and
I agree.
You want to keep your best young people in the country.
Absolutely, and I see that here. As a peace commissioner, I'd have a lot of contact with members of Garda Síochána here in Carlow town and in Tullow. And like the number of young, well-trained, experienced young males, females who have literally said, look, Western Australia somewhere, they're offering me better money, they're going to house me, and I've got better terms and conditions, and I know what my rota is going to be like. The same with nurses. Like, to be honest, we spend a huge amount of money on training and educating nurses, but we actively encourage them to leave the country. There's a disconnect here somewhere, and there doesn't seem to be a government capable of joining up the dots and saying, right, we've got a problem here. What do we do about it? It just doesn't. It's frustrating because as a local county councillor, I don't have a huge influence on some of those issues. I can shout and roar and scream all I like, but really the political parties have got to get their act together.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Willie, you said on with the social housing, the housing issue, and immigration, and what is the word on the doors when you're going around canvassing about immigration?
It's a major concern. It comes up every second, third door. People are asking, why are so many refugees being allowed in Ireland? Now, when they use the word refugees, they don't tend to distinguish between refugees and Ukrainians. They tend to mix the two together, and they are different. They do recognize that people say to me all the time, like, why is it always single men?
Yeah.
Why is it always single men coming in? We'd be quite happy to see families come in. We can understand that. There's a unit there, something we recognize. But why is it always single men coming in? And this comes up. There is, I mean, okay, I'll say it, but people are going to say, oh, he's a racist, he's far right. But people are genuinely scared and afraid of the refugees. It is something, particularly the women. They don't like it. They feel the refugees come from a different culture. They don't understand the norms and values of Irish society. They give me examples of walking down the street. Like normally, if say Paul and myself were walking down the street and we met you, Roisin, we'd stop and talk to you, or we divide and let you go in between us, or we go around you. But that doesn't always happen when people from outside of Ireland meet women, and genuinely they feel intimidation and fear. Now, jumping down someone's throat and saying that's unreasonable and it's unfair doesn't address the concern in that individual's mind. I think we need to talk to people. We need to understand where that concern comes from. We need to get them to explain, like, I mean, I look at it from the point of view, the refugees in Tullow have never been in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, how many locals have been in court? Yeah. That's the point. But that's fine for me to say that. Okay, and I understand it's fine for me to say that. But at the end of the day, there is a genuine concern and deep-rooted fear about other cultures. And I'm going to have to say there is also a deep-rooted fear about other religions coming in. And people see things happening in schools, particularly in the Dublin area, where now we've gone from Happy Christmas to taking down the picture of the Sacred Heart, the cross in the classroom, and now it's Happy Holiday.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. They're asking, why is that happening? Like, if I go to Saudi Arabia, right, I am not going to display the fact that I'm a gay man everywhere and screaming and roaring at the top of my voice, because I know there's a consequence, right? Christians practice their religion quietly and not up front and in front of other people. So the question is asked of me all the time, well, if I go abroad and I have to behave in a certain way in somebody else's country, why do we allow people coming in here and, basically doing what they want and demanding that we change? Do you see what I'm saying? The demands are on us, instead of saying, well, you're a guest here. We have norms, we have values. We actually welcome you openly, but if you're not prepared to accept our norms and values,
Yeah.
we suggest you take a plane or a boat and go somewhere else.
Because I lived in Saudi Arabia. Grew up in many of my youth in Saudi Arabia. We weren't allowed to even say we were Catholics. We weren't even allowed to, or Christians. We weren't allowed to practice our faith. There used to be American compounds, and they used to bring in guest speakers, and they would bring him in as a worker, but he wasn't allowed to say he was a priest, and everything was hush hush. So when I lived in Saudi Arabia, I had to live by the Saudi rules. I had to cover up. I had to be careful what I said and what I did. And especially as a teenager, when I was 15, my parents sent me home because it wasn't safe for me to be there as a young woman, as a Western woman.
I think we've taken political correctness too far.
Yeah.
You know, like we all have to be seen to be PC. I don't buy into that. See that, you know, it's why are all these people fleeing from a country to get away from a regime where they say there's Sharia law, and then to come to Ireland, and after a couple of years they're demonstrating on the road saying we want Sharia law here.
Yeah.
Like, go back to where you came from. I'm sorry. I know that's going to come across very racist, and I don't care. Bottom line here is people need to understand you're a guest in this country, right? We have norms, we have values, we have Christian norms, Christian values, for the most part, not for everybody, but for the most part. And if I'm going to Saudi Arabia, I'm going to behave and respect your rule of law and your norms and your values. In fact, I'll investigate them because I'll enjoy getting into the culture and enjoy it. But if you come here, you've got to accept that we do things here in a different way. And if you can't agree with that, pack your bags.
Yeah. And as you said Christmas, sorry, Paul, you said Christmas. Right. A lot of schools are now not even putting up Christmas trees in case they offend the other immigrants who are coming into the country and offend them. You know.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we're having a decent discussion about this, right? We're not insulting anyone.
No.
But I guarantee you there'll be people who will see this later and say, oh my God, did you see the three racists or the three guys from the far right later on? And, you know, it was shocking. It was terrible. You know, but, you know, if we don't have a decent and honest public discourse about immigration and what we're trying to achieve here, you know, you allow mindsets to end up burning a hotel in Newtown, Mount Kennedy. And I think it is the frustration of not being allowed to discuss something properly that our senior politicians from the government parties and Sinn Féin are literally all singing off the same hymn sheet and refusing to share that hymn sheet. And people just don't know how many people are going to come into the country. You know, and when you read something like, I think it was the Sun or the Star, they had a piece there about 100 million spent on Ukrainian pet food. Like people just, I'm not joking, the number of times that article has been mentioned to me on the doorsteps, it's frightening. People are genuinely concerned here about what's happening, what's being allowed to happen. And they welcome the fact that a politician like myself will stand up and say, look, I'm not going to allow, I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to protest against the idea that a second, third, fourth international protection accommodation centre will come to a town like Tullow with a population of 5,000. And worse still, be placed in the retail centre of Tullow with the market square and owned by people who do not live in the town. So I am going to object to that. And the reason I object to it is not because I'm racist or far right, is because there are actually no services in Tullow. The English lessons are not available. The vocational and educational training that the refugees need in order to become valuable members of society are lacking. What most people don't realize is that the refugees get an allowance of $38.50 a week on top of their food and accommodation. And in order for a young lad from, say, Nigeria who wants to get fork truck lessons, he's got to spend €8 of that money to travel to Carlow town on a bus and back in order to get, say, English lessons. But I have an encounter with one young man that was actually having to travel to Tullow from Tullow. Like that wasn't going to cost less than half his weekly allowance. So bringing people into small town Ireland where the resources do not exist to allow them integrate into small town Ireland, that smacks of desperation on our government's behalf. It smacks of they are allowing people in without understanding the consequences and without preparing for them to come to Ireland. That's completely and utterly wrong. The other thing is we've just spent 100,000 euros of Irish taxpayer money on developing a town centre plan for Tullow. Now, how can we enhance and improve the town centre if there are 4, 5, 6 refugee centres on the market square? Like, who is going to want to come in and set up a shop next door to a refugee centre? I can tell you, no one.
No.
So the policy of allowing people in is poorly thought out without having the resources like the accommodation, the educational, the training resources that are there. And like, why are, and like that's manifested quite clearly in the tent city that has grown up along Mount Street, which has now been dismantled, tent city along the canal, which has been dismantled, and now one in Ringsend. So, you know, this shows a complete lack of understanding and preparation by our government. They just don't get it.
And Willie, you talk about far right. I canvassed for the no. It's out there, and I was never quiet about that. And I was classed as a far right. Now, we are all former Labour Party members. It's how we all met through the Labour Party.
We're the farthest from far right.
Yeah, no, but so I was far right because I wanted the word woman kept in the Constitution. It's not in there, and the consequences of taking women out of the Constitution. Then up in Dublin Castle, a lady I knew had the Irish flag in Dublin Castle, right? So where's the best place to fly your national flag than Dublin Castle? And she was told, put away your flag, it's far right. Imagine. And then I said, well, are you saying our national flag is far right? My son is in the Defence Forces, wearing the tricolour on his left arm because it's closest to the heart. And he salutes the tricolour on parade. I said, are you saying all the men and women in the Defence Forces are far right? It's crazy that being proud, being a patriot, being a nationalist, and respecting our national flag and culture is far right. It's nonsensical. That is a narrative that is being set up to actually silence the citizens of Ireland.
I absolutely 100% agree with your last statement. That is exactly what it's done. It's a way of certain parties shutting down discourse, shutting down people expressing their views. So it's so much easier to say, oh, you're racist. Oh, you're far right, rather than listening to what people have to say. I mean, I've seen it so often, time and time again. It happens. People jump in with 2 left feet because they can't be bothered to listen because it isn't on the hymn sheet. And I seriously think this is where our political parties are going wrong. They're not sharing the hymn sheet. They don't even understand the hymn sheet. And the rest of us, we're not stupid. I can say the Irish public are not stupid. They get what's happening, and they will send a message to the government at the local elections, and I suspect at the European elections as well. And I think it'll be a very strong message in that you will see a decreased number of seats going to the government parties and possibly Sinn Féin as well.
I do too. So, because we're running out of time, so the next issue on your list was health when you're knocking at the doors. That was another issue.
Yeah, it's a very emotive issue because you meet people who are genuinely very ill, maybe from cancer, they may have be in pain, and they feel abandoned. To be perfectly frank, there is no... The idea that you're going to languish on a waiting list for 3 to 5 years to get an MRI so a consultant can give you a diagnosis that you have X, Y, Z wrong with you, and this is the best way of treating it, that makes absolutely no sense. Do you know what I mean? We really need to look at preventative medicine much more carefully. But to me, the health service is disjointed. It's not working. like there was an announcement 14 years ago in Tullow that there would be the building, a construction of a primary healthcare centre. 14 years later, we still haven't even got the site sorted. We haven't got the planning permission done, and there's no sign of it being built. That's just one symptom. But you'd have to, your heart break listening to the stories that people have to tell about waiting, waiting, waiting. And I think the same, particularly for children. And I'm meeting a lot of children, parents of children with disabilities and learning difficulties. And they feel really aggrieved about access to services and assessment in particular. They feel CAMS for mental health services not working. The Carlow Disability Network is in disarray as far as most people are concerned. It seems to be that the HSE is falling apart at the seams, and it's difficult to get the service that you're entitled to. And this is a new one, but more and more now, people who have private healthcare insurance, such as the VHI, are saying to me, we have it, but it's getting more difficult to get access to services as well. I mean, I know for myself, I applied for an MRI for my knees. I was having an issue. And it took me 3 months to get that MRI, even though I was willing to pay for it. And you see more and more parents having to pay for psychological assessments for their kids or autism assessments.
Which can be very expensive.
Well, I average cost from what I can see is about €1,500 or more. But parents are willing to apply for it because once you get the assessment, you can then, your foot's on the ladder as such in order to try and get additional help, like whether it's speech therapy. Like, and even if you are assessed for speech therapy and you're found that you do need speech therapy, there's no speech therapists available, or there's not enough of them are available, or you can't. One of the instances I came across most recently, my father had a fall and he was in hospital for 10 days, and then he went to Glendale in Tullow afterwards for recovery, and he came back out. But no matter how hard we worked with the HSE, and I must say they were good in the community services here in Carlow, the best you could offer me was some assistance in the mornings, 5 days a week. Like, he needs assistance at nighttime, but there's a lack of recruits of carers. They can't get people to go into care, and I end up having to, recruit privately and pay privately. No issue, I'll do it because he's my dad and I'll take care of him. But not everybody's in the position, and as lucky as I am, to be able to afford that. And I've met 2 elderly people, one very poorly looking after somebody who's slightly worse off, and having to cope at night on their own. And it just seems wrong that we just don't care anymore. Our society has gone wrong somewhere. I don't know where it went wrong, but it's like our health service is in disarray, and it needs to be, it's going to need a real structural change, and not just tinkering at the top or dividing it into regional areas. Something big is going to have to happen.
And Willie, when you think about it, the whole society over the last number of years has been completely fractured and been put into disarray. And, we've, especially over the last couple of years, it's as if there's a strategy for us all to be fighting each other at one another. You're in this camp or you're this camp, you stand for this, you stand for that. There's no standing for humanity and communities anymore. There's no agreeing to disagree or listening to someone else's opinion or perspective.
Well, I think one of the big problems is that successive governments have been trying to be all things to all people. And if you remember the Fianna Fáil governments that Bertie Ahern was at, like, if you shout loud enough, Bertie will throw a few quid at you to keep you quiet. Like, and that was wonderful in many respects, but it was actually the wrong way to do things. We seem to be jumping from one issue to the next instead of, as a nation, maybe I would suggest that we need to choose 3, 4, 5 issues that we really, really value, such as health, and that we are going to invest there. And it means we won't have money to do other things, but we all understand that we're all working together towards a particular goal, and we've given consent towards that goal, and we can all buy into it. I really think as a nation we can do it, but it's difficult when so many pressure groups are shouting, looking for X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's time governments said to the public, like, let's have this discussion, let's figure out what the important ones are, pursue them. And unfortunately, we'll have to say no to some issues. But governments, being governments, will try and solve all problems at all times. I mean, have you noticed in recent weeks the number of grant announcements that have been made in advance of the election? Like virtually every single grant scheme that's existing out there at the moment is being announced before the election in the false expectation, and I stress this false expectation, that it'll sway voters. I can tell you, it doesn't sway voters. No. Voters are not stupid. We're not easily bought. We are sophisticated people who can smell a rat when we see one, you know.
And maybe and I would say even we haven't had a proper opposition, and I'm including Sinn Féin, Labour, Social Democrats, people before Profit. Am I leaving anybody out? We need strong opposition in the next going forward in the next elections. So hold on 1 second. We need really strong opposition, and we haven't had that in the last number of years. And that's what we need. And we need county councillors like yourself listening to the people and being the voice and standing up and showing up and speaking up for the people.
But I think strong opposition is one thing, right? But I actually think we need constructive opposition. That's the important part. That if somebody in an opposition party has a good idea, it should be looked at and considered carefully. Right now, it appears that just because it came from the opposition, it has to be shot down. Like, we also have to recognize there are some good ideas in government, but we need our politicians to forget that they're parties and that they are working, they're public representatives, that they are working for the public as a whole. All 180 odd of them are working as a whole for the best outcomes for the people who elected them into that position. It regularly feels like it's about scoring one against another party, as distinct from the reality is, I don't mind who delivers. I want delivery. And if our politicians were to work together, our senior politicians to work together and consider what's best, I think that would be a big step in the right direction. It may not happen easily, because if you're so used to criticizing another party and feel scoring one off the other side is the way to get yourself elected, I think, no, that is not what should happen. We should be working as constructive opposition. And when a good idea comes from the opposition, the minister of the day should take it on board and run with it.
Well, Willie, we've run out of time. But we hope you become on the Irish Political Roundup a lot more in the future, because we love having you on. We love meeting up to you and listening to you when we were Labour Party members previously many moons ago. But you know, it's a pleasure to have you on, and you always were a man of common sense.
Well, thank you very much, Roisin, and thank you very much, Paul. And can I say Slán agus Banach to all your listeners as well, and delighted for you that Caelan's coming home on Thursday, and I can see it means so much to you. Just come home in one piece and safe. I'm really delighted. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Will, and very best of luck in the upcoming elections.
Thank you.
And if I was in Carlow, I'd vote for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, Willie Patten.
Bye. Bye-bye.